Question number 6, Grant Robertson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Finance. Does he have a plan B for the New Zealand economy, as has been called for by ANZ Bank Chief Economist Cameron Bagrie, or is he satisfied with the prospect of rising unemployment, declining GDP growth and shockingly low business confidence, as described by the Westpac Quarterly Economic Overview?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr. Speaker, in answer to the member's second question, this government is never satisfied with the state of the economy. In answer to his first question, Plan A is an economy that can continuously adapt as circumstances change, as illustrated by the fact that in the light of lower commodity prices, the exchange rate has dropped significantly and interest rates are now falling rather than rising. But at the same time, it's important that the government continues to deal with the long-term issues around productivity and economic resilience. So we have a program of microeconomic reform supporting growth through 350 actions in the business growth agenda, including, just for instance, reducing ACC levies by around $2 billion a year, extending ultra-fast broadband to 80% of New Zealanders, and delivering more skills relevant to industry through initiatives like the ICT graduate schools. Recent reports from Treasury and the Reserve Bank suggest they see the economy growing at around 2 to 2.5%, moderate sustainable growth, which will probably persist despite the excessive rhetoric of some of our bank economists.
Supplementary question, Mr. Speaker.
Order. Supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
In light of that answer, if it's all going so well, why is the Chief Economist calling for a Plan B, and why have Federated Farmers joined him in calling for a Plan B for the economy?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr. Speaker, probably for the same reasons why the caucus hasn't yet called for Plan B in the form of Grant Robertson.
Order.
Mr. Speaker, in fact, Plan E, sorry. Oh, that's
Order.
Plan E. I thought it was Plan B.
Have the answer to the question.
Is it, Mr. Speaker?
The answer to the question.
Mr. Speaker, the adjustments that will help underpin sustainable moderate growth in this economy are underway, and at the same time the government is persisting with the program of microeconomic reform, such as, for instance, the rollout of ultra-fast broadband, which actually is working because people are subscribing now. It's enabling them not just to have more entertainment, but also to run better, more productive, more internationalised businesses.
Mr. Speaker.
Supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
In light of that answer, is Westpac economist Dominic Stevens correct when he says that the latest survey of business confidence has seen the biggest single decline in a 3-month period for the last 15 years?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr. Speaker, he may well be. It would be a decline from the highest level for a long, long time. And in any case, when you look at the Westpac forecasts, they're consistent with those of the Reserve Bank and the Treasury, which show a path to moderate, sustainable growth of between 2 to 2.5%.
Supplementary question, Mr. Speaker.
Supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
In light of that answer, Mr. Speaker, can the Minister confirm that the Westpac forecast in fact foreshadows growth of 1.8% below the 2 and 2.5% that he and the Prime Minister told the House yesterday we could expect?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think that number appears as in the calendar year forecast as opposed to the standard version, which is the March quarter forecast. But for a member who regards sending a tweet as work, I'm surprised he got to that level of detail.
Supplementary question, Mr. Speaker. Here's some work for him.
Order. Supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
Is it correct? Is Dominic Stevens correct that the Canterbury rebuild has peaked 9 months earlier than expected and will no longer be contributing to growth from this year, and from 2017 will actually become, quote, an outright drag on GDP?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, I gather there's some contest of opinion over whether the Canterbury rebuild has peaked. But if it's news to that member that it will peak at some time, everyone else has known that since the day the rebuild started. It was always going to peak one day. And I think the good news is that as we get through the very successful Canterbury rebuild overseen by Minister Jerry Brownlee, the economy is resilient to international shocks. The right adjustments that we would hope would underpin further growth in jobs and incomes are occurring. And there actually isn't a good reason to panic in the way that that member is panicking.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question.
So for the sake of clarity, can he confirm that he doesn't think he needs to change anything about his approach to the economy, despite the fact that the people he's accusing of panicking include two major bank economists and Federated Farmers, and he can confirm once and all for the House that he's always right and everyone else is wrong?
The Honourable Bill English.
No, Mr Speaker. In general, we would pay more attention to what's happening for those who are out on the economic playing field rather than those who are sitting in the grandstand watching it, which is where they are. So the government has a program which is designed to be adaptive in a continuous way, and that's exactly what's happening. The exchange rate is falling, interest rates are falling. There'll be adjustments in businesses and households all around New Zealand, because we fundamentally believe that when the pressure comes on a bit, the last person you'd go to is the Labor Party finance spokesman. People who are running their own businesses and households are in a far better position to make the judgments about what changes need to be made, with support from government, whether it's investment in infrastructure and in research and development. It's focus on a level playing field for taxation. Order. It's strong focus on innovation.
Struggling, go again.
Supplementary.
Order. Supplementary question, the Right Honourable Prime Minister.
To the Minister, can the Minister confirm if he does have to write Plan B for the economy, will he be writing it himself, or will he just cut and paste it and plagiarise it from other people?
Order. That question will not help the order of this House. Question? No, I've ruled it out. Question. Order. Question.